Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avenger.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Shadows whispered in the wires, hidden hands behind the throne, built their kingdom out of silence, chained the world they thought they owned. Silent codes and stolen stories, truth was buried out of sight, but in the quiet hearts were beating, waiting for the spark of light. They thought we'd never see the masks behind the screen, but the cracks began to bleed, and we began to dream. From the dark to light we're rising, breaking chains, the veil dividing, truth awaken, flames igniting, the old guard falling, freedom climbing, dark to light, the dawn's arriving. We were lost but now unblinding, every whisper, every fighting, all converging, dark to light. We were ghosts inside their system, digital soldiers, quiet storms, turned the weapons of deception into signals to transform. Every lie became a beacon, every secret fed the flame. We're the chorus of the voiceless, calling out their hidden name. They thought we'd never know, but rivers find their flow, and seeds they tried to sow have grown and overflow. From the dark to light we're rising, breaking chains, the veil dividing, truth awaken, flames igniting, the old guard falling, freedom climbing, dark to light, the dawn's arriving. We were lost but now unblinding, every whisper, every fighting, all converging, dark to light, dark to light. No more kings behind the curtain, no more pawns inside their game. We are fire, we are certain we'll erase their hidden name. Every tower built on lies will crumble, every shadow forced to see the sun. We are many, we won't stumble, we are rising, we've begun, we've begun. From the dark to light we're rising, breaking chains, the veil dividing, truth awaken, flames igniting, the old guard falling, freedom climbing, dark to light, the dawn's arriving. We were lost but now unblinding, every whisper, every fighting, all converging, dark to light, dark to light.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. And today is Saturday. We are doing a special broadcast just because we didn't get a show out last night, so we have to get it out today. We were setting up a new studio. So the first thing I need to do is, can I get a 5.5? Can everybody hear me fine? Does everything look right? Does everything sound right? I am in a completely new studio. It's everything behind me is great, but everything in front of me and beside me and all this stuff is brand spanking new, and been working out the kinks for the last day. So I hope that everybody can hear me more clear. People are like, you're breaking up, man, and all this other stuff. So the last few weeks, it's been kind of rough. So, 5.5's coming up all the way through. Does it sound better at least? I mean, I spent a lot of money on this stuff. So if it sounds better, glad. All right, man. It is Saturday edition of the Daily Dose. And that right there was Guardians of Truth. That is my music. Yes, I wrote that music. I performed much of the guitar on that and put together all of the various different band parts within this music through various different AI editors and so forth. A little bit different than you see from all of these other people just putting music out there. I actually have been writing this stuff for years. And I'm finally happy that I can get this music out there and put it out to the world. So fantastic right there. Man, we don't have much going on. There's not much news. And you notice I'm always looking this way when I'm doing the news. Today I'm going to look this way because my main monitor has moved. My main monitor is now over this way. So I don't know. It's like things are interesting just because I don't know. Just different. Everything's new. So it's I'm sitting here. I started the show and I'm wondering why Rumble won't come on. I'm like, why the hell is Rumble not churning on? I'm like, what's going on? Because I never turned Rumble on. I'm like, oh shit. So I had to go do that. And so you become a little forgetful when setups are new and you kind of change up your routine and everything like that. But very clear. I appreciate all of you guys out there. Let's go in and get started here. We saw this post this weekend on Truth Social by President Trump, and I want to bring this post up because this is kind of going to be the theme that I kind of want to set up, at least for my mind and how I look at these things. When I see this type of post right here by President Trump, and I'll bring it up on the brink screen over here, walking side by side with George Washington and President Trump. I don't know who posted this, if this was something the White House Communications Department did, or that Trump's going in the grok and make a picture of me and George Washington. I'm on a black horse, he's on a white horse, and we're walking through the meadow, right? I don't know. But I assume that it's something of that nature. But this is what I want you to see. Is President Trump's riding a black horse. George Washington is riding a white horse. That is the binary that we've seen repeated over and over, dark to light or light to dark, right? And in one method that I was kind of thinking of how you could actually look at this post is President Trump, dark MAGA, the dark side. And what do I mean by that is the covert operations, the clandestine operations in the backdrop, the things that have to be done. That reminds me, remember that quote that President Trump puts out? Is that he who saves his country breaks no laws. That's the black horse, right? People don't agree with what he's doing, but he's going through the motions to save the country. And what does it do? It brings light to Washington. White light to Washington. That's how I'm viewing this. At least that's how I'm seeing this. Does that make sense? Dark to light is that Trump, through the actions that he's doing that a lot of people don't disagree with, that's produced massive fractures within MAGA, is actually bringing light back to Washington. It's bringing us back into the light. Does that make sense? I hope so. Because, it makes sense to me. Let's keep on moving on over here. And, we're going to get into the Iran conversation. And there's a lot to talk about with Iran. Iran is very, very multifaceted. And when we say multifaceted, what we're talking about here is that there's a lot of reasons why Rumble went stupid. Is Rumble all messed up now? Hold on. You can probably hear that. Rumble seems fine. Rumble's, oh man, that camera is crisp. This camera right here, it's crisp, guys. Man, I'm in 4K quality video and audio. That's kind of cool. I just saw someone post on YouTube right over here that what they say? They said Rumble went stupid. No, Rumble didn't go stupid. I went stupid because I forgot to turn Rumble on. And let me go over here. I want to do something real quick. I'm going to mute this tab. And I'm just pulling all the chats up of everything that we have going on. This is what I usually do before the shows. But my biggest problem during a show is that I can't monitor everything at the same time. So what do I have here? I have the Rumble chat here, I have X, and I have YouTube chat here. So they're kind of like monitors to see the video. Then I got my news and stuff over here, and then I got me right here. And I got just the different chats going in everywhere. So I like to pay attention to everything. People are like, dude, you missed the rants last night. You missed all. Sorry, I apologize. It's like very difficult with a one-man team and a laptop in front of you and a monitor right here where you're got like your news on, right? And so, hello to everybody out there. I didn't put my normal comments. So like normally I'll go into the chats and be like, what's up, familia? Hi, fam, right? And so, hi, fam. How we doing out there? Hope everybody is doing well, man. Saturday, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I don't even know if I opened up with that, did I? I'm kind of like in a good mood. I don't know if people realize, I'm like just in a good mood today, having a great time. Oh man, who thought of, okay, dude, so there's someone in Rumble that is blowing up the chat. Bro, yeah, you're gonna get fucking gone. Bye-bye. See ya. All right. I'm not putting up with trolls tonight. We're not even going to comment on them. But you want to blow up and spam the chat, you're going to be gone. That's how it goes. So we're going to get into the Iran conversation. Like I was saying, it's multifaceted. There's a lot of things happening in Iran. There's a lot of reasons why Iran was specifically like one of the main targets. And we talked about this back in 2025 before anything even ramped up in Iran. And I bring that up specifically because it's a key juncture point within the global economy, a key juncture point within the circulation of terrorism and within the Middle East and criminality worldwide. And as well, when you start to look at resource accessibility points and resources, and this is what we've been talking about since 2024, is the control of natural resources and raw materials throughout the world, then Iran becomes a very, very big player for this. And so when we start to look at Iran, we have to look at all the various different players involved. Number one, you have the European Union. Number two, you have China. Number three, you have Russia. Number four is you have Israel. And people don't look at Israel as a big player because there's this big idea that Iran and Israel are mortal enemies. And yeah, not really. Not really. Yeah, Netanyahu would absolutely love to see Iran destroyed, and he would love to run Iran and take all their oil. And the Mossad has infiltrated multiple aspects of the IRGC and various different political leadership within Iran. So that when I say that it's not really, it's because of the level of infiltration that's occurred over there. So when we go into this idea with Trump saying today that he says, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Strait of Hormuz a U.S. territory. Listen to this with President Trump here. And let me bring, I got to bring this up. We got to replace, we got to go here. And I'm going to be a little slow today, but that's okay. Let's bring President Trump up here.
We're bringing the prices way down. Look at what's happening, coming way down. And after we finish defeating Iran, which is being very badly defeated, pretty soon I'll be declaring the Hormuz Strait a territory of the United States.
So you remember when I said the other day, when we talked about this, when Trump first talked about it, and he chuckled at the beginning there, is that this is not the end state. What's going on right now is there is a naval blockade within the Strait of Hormuz. We are only letting through what we want to let through. Traffic is not as it was prior to this. It is not normal, and Iran doesn't have the massive control over the strait that it is for decades before. So tomorrow is actually the end of the mutual understanding agreement between Trump and Iran. It's 24 hours and this thing is over. And Iran is warning the U.S. to accept defeat and says it will maintain control over the Strait of Hormuz as disruptions continue to impede oil traffic around the world. So Iran is playing this one game. Now, if I give you my full perspective on this, I think that there's multiple factions playing out in Iran right now. I think that there's IRGC hardliners. These are people that are loyal to the clergy, the mullahs, the religious factionality, which is primarily controlled by British intelligence and British banking dynastical systems. Keep that in mind. Then you have the various parts of the IRGC in the political center that are infiltrated and controlled by the Mossad. This is dwindled down massively. There was an airstrike in Iran the day before the United States actually went in and rescued the downed pilot behind enemy lines. And that killed over 50 different IRGC head members and commanders, and a lot of those, by the way, were Mossad agents. So we've laid this out multiple different times for people who are maybe just joining in, like, what are you talking about? But yes, it's very, very true. So, and then the other part is loyalist actions to China and so forth. But then there's this other part. There's parts of the political establishment that have now gained force within Iran that are loyal, I believe, and working with, I believe, Trump. Now, you have to look at the whole war in the context to begin to see this. You know, Iran bombed the South Pars field in Qatar, which really didn't make much sense because of some of that's their infrastructure. But when you start to look at it, this was British Petroleum and other British companies' infrastructure. Then they bombed the oil and gas fields in Iraq, which was Chinese and British infrastructure. Donald Trump, about a month and a half ago, now Iran bombed those, took them out. Then Trump, about a few weeks ago, met with the Iraqi prime minister, and he negotiated deals for American companies to go in there and rebuild the infrastructure in Iraq that was bombed by Iran. So removing British and Chinese infrastructure and putting in American infrastructure. That's different. It's almost like Iran did Trump a favor by bombing those two locations. By the way, the Qatari infrastructure is Chevron and other U.S. companies are getting those deals as well. But then you hear reports that Ukrainian intelligence is operating in Iraq, working with various different militia groups who are associated against Iran, but also against the Iraqi government. Now, this doesn't make any sense because Ukraine is supposed to be an ally of the United States of America, but the Iraqi government is the one that Trump put into place and wants in place and is negotiating deals with. But at the same time, you have Ukrainian intelligence that is undermining Iraqi leadership. The hell's going on with that? Well, you start to realize that Ukraine might be working for some other international intelligence agency like the Mossad. And why would Israel want disruption and destabilization within the Middle East? Because that is how Israel retains and gains more power. If people think that what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing in Israel is anything about religion, you are wrong. It is about money, power, and control. It is about bringing Israel to the point to where they are a regional and global superpower. That is a direct quote by Benjamin Netanyahu. He stated, when talking about his objectives versus Donald Trump's objectives in the Iran war, he said, look, what Israel wants to do is we want to go in there and we want to control Iranian oil. We want all the control over their oil. We want to build a pipeline with our partners. I wonder who funds a lot of the social activists that are pro-Israel here in the United States. It's their partners, like Chevron. But their partners will build a pipeline from Iran, 3,000 miles, whatever it is, from Iran under the Strait of Hormuz into Israel, and then they'll offload that oil into the Mediterranean. And then Netanyahu says that after this, we will rise up to become a regional and a global superpower. Now, this is also interesting when you look at Israel in this context, because when you start to look at southern Lebanon, Hamas, right? The same Hamas that Benjamin Netanyahu funded $30 million a week through Qatar is a real threat, and he keeps on undermining Trump's peace negotiations and deals by attacking that Hamas. Why? Because southern Lebanon is incredibly rich in natural gas fields, untapped, unexcavated natural gas fields, as well as rare earth minerals and metals. And then when you go to Gaza, and you'd be like, well, what about the genocide in Gaza? That was completely just religious oriented. No, it wasn't. He was trying to get them to leave. Why? Off the coast of Gaza, controlled by the Palestinian Authority, are over 25 gas and oil wells, rigs, that have been inactive for over the last 25 years, that have trillions of barrels of gas per square acre, ready to be excavated out. In other words, Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to get a control over Middle Eastern energy to make Israel a global superpower. And he committed genocide on the people of Gaza to do that, and continues to eliminate people, innocent civilians within southern Lebanon to do that. And then he wants to control Iran. Now people are like, well, but Israel's the reason why Donald Trump went into Iran. You know, sometimes what I do is I imagine myself having conversations with people who say stupid things. Right? Like, and nothing against Joe Kent. Like, I'm not an anti-Joe Kent guy. But if I had a conversation with Joe Kent, these are the things that I would ask Joe Kent when he comes out and says that Benjamin Netanyahu is absolutely the reason why Donald Trump went into Iran. I would say, okay, Joe, were you in the meeting? Well, no, I wasn't, but I know people who were. So they went into a classified meeting and then they talked to you about classified intelligence? Well, no, they didn't. Oh, okay. So you're just bringing about assumptions, what you think happened. Yeah. This is how the conversation goes. Now we go, well, what is the process and procedures for the president to authorize military action on a sovereign foreign nation? Is it just, hey, Bibi said so let's do this? Or is there a process flow in place? And Joe Kent would say, actually, there's a process flow in place. Is that around President Trump in the Situation Room, most likely you're going to have Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. You're going to have Pete Hegseth. You're going to have John Ratcliffe. You're going to have DNI Tulsi Gabbard. At the time, the DNI, you're going to have members of the National Security Council. You're going to have the White House's General Counsel. They're all going to be there, and they're going to be listening to the intelligence that is being given by Benjamin Netanyahu. And then President Trump says and looks at these people, and he doesn't go, okay, we're just going to go drop bombs in Iran. And an hour, 24 hours later, bombs drop in Iran, because that's not how it works. And Joe Kent knows this. And so what would happen after this point is Dan Kane would stand up and say, hey, look, based on our assessment, we have to confirm this intelligence. But if we can confirm the intelligence, this brings us about a very, very strategic point against Iran, which we practiced for since 2019. We've had the mission planners on top of this since 2019. We can have the people ready to go within 24 hours on this direct mission. Pete Hegseth stands up and says, yes, we're gonna take this to our Defense Intelligence Agency. We're going to confirm this. John Ratcliffe stands up and says, hey, we're going to go out there. We're going to confirm this. You have multiple sources in the intelligence agencies are going to go out there and confirm that level of intelligence the best that they can to confirm what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Now, here's the thing, is you don't just go and strike Iran because you strike Iran. It doesn't matter if Netanyahu goes in there and they have a nuclear weapon. It was given to him by China. That is a different type of military mission that would be done there. They knew that they didn't have a nuclear weapon, and it's one of the reasons why they went in there with that decapitation event, because if they had a nuclear weapon and they tried the decapitation event, nukes would have been fired. So when we start to outline this out, is that Netanyahu was simply the deliverer of intelligence, stating that, hey, we have good intelligence, that all of these people are going to be in the same place at the same time. This is a prime opportunity for a decapitation event. And he was absolutely right. Not that I like Netanyahu, not that I agree with Netanyahu, but he was right. And if Trump was ever going to do the Iran mission the way he wanted to go and disrupt this whole system, which we're going to talk about here in the next few seconds, this was the point in time to do it. And that's exactly what he did. He had all of his advisors come out and say, yeah, if we're going to do this, this is the time to do it. And then he authorized the mission. And it went through the hands of hundreds, if not 1,000 people prior to that approval actually coming out. So this is why I like think about this, because like I know the process. Does Joe Kent, because he's out there saying this, or is Joe Kent part of a psyop that is a counter movement narrative that is being generated, that's playing out right now in front of us to fracture MAGA? I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both, right? So going into Iran now. So there's a lot happening here with Iran and what Trump is doing and why Trump's objectives. Oh my God, this douchebag. Hold on. Hey, if we have any mods out there, let's go ahead and get rid of these people. Mega nuke. So that person that keeps on coming in and just spamming the chat, if you could help out, or any of the other mods on Rumble, much appreciated. Okay. Lost my train of thought there for a second. My hair's all messed up. So it's multifaceted. The first part of the facet we're going to look at is we're going to look at the European faction of this. And this is Linda Kokinda with Promethean Action. And you guys have all heard Linda multiple different times before. And I love bringing Linda up to say her piece. And one day maybe we'll get her on the show. If you guys can just go spam her X posts, tell you need to get on Josh Reed's show. That'd be great. It'd be a great conversation. But listen what Linda here has to say in the first part.
Scott Bessent delivered a message to the government of Iran and to the world.
At the president's orders, we have raised the level even again, and watch this space for more announcements coming next week, because we are going to apply measures like have never been seen in the history of economic isolation on a country.
That is an execution of a policy that has been years in the making. And a week earlier, Bessent told you what it was.
The strait is never going back to the way it was, because the Iranians have used or tried to use it as a choke point. What we are going to see over the next 2 years, the strait's going to become irrelevant. It is going to become just another body of water.
This isn't just about Iran. It's about the end of a British choke point that's been used as a weapon in service of a policy which has kept the region in flames for decades. Now, if you're living in your social media feeds, you're probably getting whiplash.
Susan! Sorry.
The straits are open,
I saw a chat up here with Linda. Like reading things and... Sorry, my bad.
America is winning, America is losing. That's not the story. It's a distraction from the real one. The real story is much bigger, and it didn't start 6 months ago. It started 50 years ago. And last month, a Lebanese diplomat blew the lid off that story. He named the names, and he did it at the empire's own Chatham House. I'm Susan Kokinda. I followed that story 50 years ago when few others did. So if you want to follow this, hit those like, subscribe, and share buttons so we can stay in touch and reach more people. Here's what I'm going to cover. First, what our Treasury and Energy Secretary said about the end of that choke point. Second, the indictment delivered at Chatham House. And third, what President Trump is building to replace it. So start with Scott Bessent's comment again. The strait will never go back to the way it was. Energy Secretary Chris Wright described how that is already happening. In an interview with Fox News, Wright addressed the panic mongering in the commentariat.
So you're saying that because of the U.S. military escorts and because some of these ships go dark going through the strait, that those numbers of these tracking agencies are not accurate?
Exactly. They're trying the best they can, but almost all of these ships have their AIS, their transponders are off. So they're dark, they're under escort. And it's a different shipping operation than we had before the conflict. But it's 8 or 9 million barrels a day on a running average are going through the strait. Plus, you've got to add the 6 million barrels a day that are being diverted via pipelines. And those pipelines are being expanded as well.
So the real gap is 5 to 6 million barrels, not the 15 million the doomsday commentators keep repeating. The interviewer kept hammering on the gotcha question. Who controls the strait right now? And Chris Wright flipped it from the tactical to the strategic.
But their ability to cause difficulties are declining, our ability to escort and bring products out of that region is growing. They have sort of one card, and it's shrinking in size.
One shrinking card. That's not a choke point anymore. That's what Bessent meant when he forecast the future irrelevancy of the strait. But the situation on the ground in Hormuz is just one flank in the overall strategy. Economic isolation that Bessent spoke of is the final phase of a strategy that he's been carrying out since March 2025.
And we've been going after, as you said, their bank accounts, crypto wallets, assets around the world, cutting off payments into both the leadership in the regime and the government itself.
So while Treasury was quietly strangling the Iranian regime's economic networks, the U.S. was creating alternate oil coming through the strait. Alternatives like uncorking our own energy production, like liberating Venezuela from Maduro so it could produce oil and augment U.S. capabilities, like creating a world where other Gulf states could liberate themselves from the status quo.
Okay. So one part of this idea, what she is talking about as well, is the closing down of the strait, or the control of the Strait of Hormuz, has done massive things internationally. Number one is it puts an incredible strain on countries like China, who's dependent upon the Strait of Hormuz for much of their oil. They have a three-legged oil triangle: Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. Venezuela and Iran have been neutralized, so Russia becomes one of the only parts. The other parts of that energy endurance that comes about for China comes about from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, which are then also delayed with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. So it becomes a strategic advantage for President Trump in the context of the advancement of artificial intelligence, because now you got a leg up on China, and China has to wind down manufacturing, processing, and their economic growth. Number two is you get the United States has massive amounts of energy infrastructure, and we just needed a little bit of time and some buyers in order to get going. By Donald Trump doing what he was doing, being the black horse, right? Going in and doing what he did with Iran, he has given the United States time to begin ramping up oil and gas sales around the world, utilizing the South United States ports, and we become one of the largest producers of natural gas in the world, and one of the largest exporters in the world of natural gas and oil. Why? Because of what happened in Iran and what Donald Trump has been doing. And here's the thing, is that's not going to change. Number three thing is the global economic control factions that controlled global resources because of the Strait of Hormuz. Let me explain that, because that's a little bit more vague in a statement. So oil, natural gas, is responsible for the transportation of every damn resource on this planet. It moves from one point to another point, whether it's the excavation of it out of the ground, of the raw materials, or the manufacturing and processing components that need oil and grease and all these other things, or whether it's the diesel engines and the rails or the ships that transport it across the world, is that the energy market is first and primary within the global supply chain, as well as is it a direct connection to every single market within the global economy. So if you have disruptions or price hikes or increases within global energy, everything else goes up, and the cost of living then also goes up as well. Well, if you know the story of Iran and what happened there, is that British intelligence, British Petroleum back in the 1950s went in there and they put in the Shah. The Shah had a certain deal. I think the deal was like they were getting 30% of all profitability from a sale of a barrel of oil. Well, within the 1960s, the Shah realized that, hey, other Middle Eastern countries were getting way better deals and they want to renegotiate their deal. Well, British intelligence didn't like that idea, and they overthrew the Shah in the 1970s. And what they did is they implemented one of their radical extremist secret agents. You have Robini and you have Khamenei that come in. And where did they come from? They came from France and Italy. They flew them directly from Britain into London, and they take over control. And this is where you get Ayatollah Khomeini, who comes in after the death of Khomeini. So that happened in the late 1970s, early 1980s, the Iran crisis, all of this stuff. Now, why is that important? Because British intelligence never let go of control over that area and region. Now, you have Peter Navarro, who has came out and he's written articles, probably should write a book on this, but it's called the Iran Terror Premium, and it's dominated the world for the last 50 years. And this is how it works. Is that anytime that the Ayatollah, extreme radicalized extremist, a fundamental Islamic, comes out there and threatens any nation in the Middle East or threatens the United States or anybody in the West, even Europe, what happens is they always threaten the Strait of Hormuz. And when any type of disruption occurs within the Middle East, any type of conflict or skirmish happens within the Middle East that Iran or their proxies are involved in, you have what's known as the Iran Terror Premium that happens. What does that mean? 85% of the shipborne traffic that moves through the Strait of Hormuz is insured through one company and one company only. That company is Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London, if any of those ships in the Strait, going through the Strait of Hormuz, have a potential threat increase, well, they increase the insurance premiums. So anytime that the Ayatollah came out and threatened destabilization within the Middle East or on the Strait of Hormuz or against Israel or the United States, you would have the insurance premiums of those ships go up sporadically. Well, here's the other part. Lloyd's of London, a 300-year-old British company, is very, very well integrated and connected into the London financial district. And this is the large financial institutions and the various different global banks. And so they know that once Lloyd of London's goes out there and increases the insurance premium, and they know that the rates of which they're going to increase them, a little bit of insider trading, they go out there onto the futures market and they buy up all the oil and gas contracts. The next day, when the insurance premiums increase, gas goes up over the course of the next few days. They sell it off for billions of dollars of profitability. And over 50 years of this happening, that's equated to approximately $33 trillion of profitability because of the control over the Strait of Hormuz. But what does that also do? It disrupts the global supply chain, the global economy, other energy producers and transporters around the world. But this is a mechanism that British intelligence has utilized to maintain control over the resources in the Middle East for a very, very long time. And since President Trump has been in office and going about this, he has dismantled much of that infrastructure. This is what we were talking about earlier. A lot of the infrastructure that Iran destroyed in the South Fars Field or in even Iraq was British petroleum or British company owned. And that has since been destroyed, and the United States infrastructure is now moving into a lot of this. So this is an idea that we have to understand, that there's this large economic variable at play that goes against British global dominance. And when we say British global dominance, what we're really talking about here, I kind of differ a little bit from Susan Kokinda, is I don't look at it as like the British what we call the old guard, the British aristocracy, the London bankers, the global financial, system. These are not the controllers of the world. I think they're just one faction of controllers. I think at one point they had a lot of power and control, probably the most, but that has been dismantled by Donald Trump. But what Donald Trump is doing is leveraging against their power. And so since he came in 2025, the trade war that's been going on, renegotiating all the various different trade deals, all the tariffs that have gone out there, taking back the Panama Canal, disrupting Maduro in Venezuela and drawing that oil into the United States of America, going into the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting Iran, and now controlling that accessibility point to energy, talking about Greenland, doing the Alaska summit with Russia, and talking about the various different negotiations of how they're going to do excavations into the Arctic. All of these things disrupt China and Europe. And they disrupt Europe, not in the context of its people, but to basically exploit the damage that they've done to their country slowly over time, preparing it for the communist socialist one world government that was coming about that was supposed to have happened already, Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Because what was happening in Europe over the course of the last 26 years was preparations for the Great Reset, preparations for the Great Transition into a world government, a new world order. But Donald Trump has dismantled that, and now he's exploiting the damage that they did to their own country and the mechanisms that they utilize to destroy much of the institutions that surrounded all of that buildup to basically get rid of them. And it's working like a freaking charm. And Iran was just another component of that larger system. So next. What do we have? Pete Hegseth. Well, actually, let's listen to this. Let's listen to this clip. Let's listen. Let's I can't even talk straight sometimes. I'm going to be a little slow on these shows for a little while until I can get my bearings. But let's listen to this.
So Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says that the United States can maintain the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely, telling reporters, quote, "We will rotate ships in and out as we have, and we will continue to do that." Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt reports from Tel Aviv. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Martha, the war of words over who controls the Strait of Hormuz right now has become really quite surreal. The U.S. naval blockade is in full effect. It is designed, of course, to prevent Iranian or Iranian-linked vessels from transiting the strait. And as a result of that blockade, President Trump says, quote, "The USA has total control over the Strait of Hormuz. I think we will keep it. Our naval blockade is being called by everyone a wall of steel, and there is nothing Iran can do about it." Iran says there is plenty it can and is doing about it. And, quote, "The Strait of Hormuz, as before, remains under the full management and control of the Islamic Republic of Iran. No commercial vessel or oil tanker can or will be able to transit the strait safely without the authorization and supervision of Iran's powerful armed forces." Now, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says around 9 million barrels of oil a day are getting through the strait. That's compared to around 20 million barrels before the war began. Secretary Wright says millions more are going through other methods such as pipelines. But clearly, we're all talking about the Strait of Hormuz right now, Martha. The stated aim of the war in the first place, preventing Iran ever getting a nuclear weapon, is very much on the back burner for now, at least, Martha.
Yeah. All right. So, the control of the Strait of Hormuz. Does President Trump have alternate intentionality about this declaration? Basically stating that, hey, Iran's a big country with a big, powerful military. We sunk their entire navy. We have naval superiority. We downed their whole air force. We have air superiority over the Strait of Hormuz, and we are allowing the 9 million barrels of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran. We are in control. Now, is this a message to somebody else? Because there is what we always call the silent war going on. And this is the ideals of unrestricted warfare, what we talked about the other day with China. For anybody that doesn't know or is probably putting this together as you're watching the world unfold, is that there is a silent war going on right now in the midst of technology and how technology is evolving. And I say evolving specifically using that term because we are exponentiating our technological prowess right now in the world more than you could ever imagine. We are rapidly moving faster than we ever have in the last 10, 20, 50, even 100 years. The development of artificial intelligence is going to be exponential in its evolution to what's called artificial superintelligence. We are already in low levels of artificial general intelligence, which means that at any point in time between now and the next second after this, or the next day, we could obtain artificial superintelligence. Here's the thing. If China reaches that goal first, then China's 100-year plan, the unrestricted warfare doctrine that they put out there, will be utilized within full effect, and the United States of America will cease to exist. That's a problem. Hence why Donald Trump has gone out there to control the accessibility of various different very rare natural resources and energy and oil. Control of the Panama Canal, control of Maduro's oil in Venezuela, drawing that to the southern states of the United States and then flowing to China. Control of Iran and Iran's oil through the Strait of Hormuz. So Donald Trump has alternatives of what he's actually doing here. He's sending a signal directly to China that our naval blockades are highly effective and that we could sustain them for long periods of time. Why? Because if China decided to take Taiwan, which, by the way, quite literally, if China wants to rule the world in the context economically and geopolitically, they would have to take Taiwan sometime within the next 3 to 5 years. They just have to, before another country basically builds out the infrastructure of computational chipsets or before artificial superintelligence is declared. So they got a very limited time frame in order to take Taiwan. And I say that because Donald Trump and the United States of America are controlling the energy foundation of the world. Why does that matter? Artificial intelligence, data, computation, and energy. Those are the 3 core foundations that allow artificial intelligence to do what it does. And all the special math and the engineers and all this stuff behind it, that is ancillary. What we're talking about is data, computation, and energy. Energy being the core foundation, which means that core foundation, and then computation becomes the second intermediary. Whoever controls computation, chipset making, the newest GPUs that are coming onto the market, they then become a cross-section of control within artificial intelligence. And right now, the United States has been leading in that with Intel and NVIDIA and other various different companies, but that primarily comes out of Taiwan because they have the majority of the chipset making done there, which is very close proximity to China. A lot of those factories are being built up in Arizona and Georgia in the United States of America, but some of them are going to take 10 years to rebuild the various different machinery that they have going over there. So with that being said, if China decided to take Taiwan, they now control another choke point in artificial intelligence. And that would be very strategic of them. But here's the problem. China is not an isolationist country. What do I mean by that? If the United States or Russia closed off all their borders, brought in all their people, and just locked the door and didn't let anybody in or out, they could sustain themselves for 200 to 500 years without any help from anybody. Because we have all the natural resources, all the rare earth minerals and metals, and all the energy that we need right within our own land infrastructure. That's Russia and the United States. China does not. China imports the majority of their oil and gas. China imports the majority of their farmline products and their various different produce and livestock. Which means that if China was faced with a supply chain disruption, China gets put into a pickle. China can't last very long. And it's one strategic advantage that Donald Trump has over them. That's why control of the Strait of Hormuz is so damn critically important. But also the control of the Strait of Hormuz is now a secondary messaging technique that President Trump uses against China. Because if we can lock down the Strait of Hormuz, then we can 100% efficiently lock down the Strait of Malacca, which about 80% of all Chinese goods going into China, imports, flow through. And if we can shut down the Strait of Malacca, then China doesn't have much time to wage a war to go out there and take Taiwan or even be kinetic with the United States. They can't last long. It becomes a war of attrition at that point where China will always eventually lose. This is why they've always gone the methodology to asymmetrical warfare or to proxy warfare through like Ukraine or through Iran. So keep that in mind, because I think that that's really, really critically important to understand as we start to move forth with this war in Iran and what's going on over there. I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is from Rumble. This is for the Rumble audience out there. We hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part most people miss. Crypto was created so you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of banks holding your money, delaying transfers, limiting access, you are in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you've felt that problem. Now, fast forward to today, Everyone's heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why I use Rumble Wallet. It takes all that complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. No complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank and be up and running in minutes. Once you are set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like me directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download the Rumble Wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you are in the game. In just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. And really important there, crypto is going to make a very, very massive comeback. And I highly recommend getting a wallet like the Rumble Wallet, because it's going to be very, very useful here in the coming 6 to 12 months when we move into the point of an economic boom. I was going to have the communism, socialism talk. We talked a lot about that the other day. Speaker Johnson came out and talked a little bit about the midterms. He said the Republicans will keep and grow the House majority. I'm absolutely convinced we're going to keep the House majority and we're going to grow that majority. In other words, you have Speaker Johnson coming out talking about how, look, the midterm elections are not going to be what people think they are. I think that we're going to be absolutely secure, and that we're not only going to retain House majority, we're going to grow House majority. And that begins to sound more and more like a red wave to me. So what happens if the Trump administration is successfully able to implement a national security emergency on election integrity and infrastructure? They're able to get the post office to get all the voter rolls of all the states through executive decree, through the national security measures. They clean up the voter rolls. They basically only send mail-in ballots out to people who are qualified under the laws and the rules of each state of who can actually vote in an election. And we have a fair and legitimate, quasi-fair and legitimate election. What happens when we have supermajority? That would be the best type of scenario we have, is where we get over 60% of the Senate, and we get 2/3 of the House. Supermajority. Haven't had that in over 100 years. Is it possible? It's possible. But things have to happen. People have to get active. We can't have poor turnouts like we did primarily through the primaries. There's another part here that is very interesting. The Democrats are broke. I've talked about this for years. Act Blue is under criminal investigation. You have many different candidates around the country who are Democrats who are no longer seeking election. They're incumbents, but they don't have any campaign funds. USAID, the money circle of how money would flow overseas to foreign NGOs and then back through private infrastructure into the coffers of different politicians' campaigns, has been shut down. We've seen tons of different Democrat candidates being taken down through scandal after scandal. In other words, we're potentially watching the end of the Democratic Party. It's either going to be this election or the 2028 election that this is going to occur. With that being said, we are moving into kind of uncharted territory that we, the American people, begin to mold and transition our country into that vision that we've always sought and that we've always believed in. But with the Democrat Party, the radical Democrat Party, going further and further left, but potentially being on the verge of collapse as it is known today, this brings about a prime opportunity. Is there going to be the rising up of a third party in the United States that is going to take in the vacuum of voters from the fall of the Democrat Party, of those who don't want to go far radical left? My belief? Yeah. And it's already happening. And I believe that that's also movement warfare, that it is a socially constructed and engineered movement to drive people to an alternative to MAGA, an alternative to Trump. And that's why you see a lot of the friction and division within MAGA that you've been witnessing over the course of the last few years. Thought that would go pretty well. Massachusetts mayor arrested for COVID loan fraud. That's right. Mayor Brian DePena was arrested for over $1.5 million in COVID loan fraud. Now, I went out there and I commented. I said, now do Congress and Senate. Now do Newsom and the governors and various other state employees. Come on, if we're going to do this for one, we got to do this for all. We can't just go arrest mayors. We got to get everybody. Okay, this is where it gets good. This is a clip that I shared the other day, and I'm going to bring this up again because this part of the show is where things get a little interesting. And I want to show you a narrative that's being set up by the Trump administration. It's the context of the drip drip and where this drip drip is heading. And I don't know if these people are watching my show because I seem to be the only one fucking talking about these things. I seem to put them out all first and then other people copy and replicate. But let's listen to it. Let me put it together.
You've got the Biden campaign develops the theme that we're going to call the Hunter Biden stuff Russian disinformation and conspiracy theory. Then you're going to have 51 intelligence analysts go out and write a bogus letter saying, don't believe the Hunter Biden laptop, even though the FBI has it and has corroborated it. And then you have the intelligence community going out and discrediting long-term confidential human sources who have been providing information, some as far back as 2008. So these are long-term, reliable, confidential human sources. And they're putting their body in front of any criminal investigation. And then remember what the IRS whistleblowers told us a couple of years ago? They kept trying to bring a criminal case against Hunter Biden, and the deep state wouldn't let them do that. This was a 360-degree protection racket for the Biden family, and law enforcement and intelligence, which is supposed to be politically neutral and about the facts, ignored the facts and played the politics.
Okay, I had to get rid of a troll there.
The Biden campaign developed
Sorry.
We're going to call the Hunter Biden stuff.
Oh, my mouse not working. Okay, there we go. I had to moderate YouTube over there, so no worries. Let me get my scroller bar over here, back over here. Where are you? Okay, there you are. Okay, my monitor system's a little messed up. Okay. So what John Solomon's saying there, he's talking about how there is 14 various different confidential informants that came forth to the FBI, basically throwing Biden under the bus, saying that this is one of the most corrupt people in the world. You cannot allow him to be a candidate for president of the United States. And instead of actually moving forth with the information, the FBI shut it down, created their own counterintelligence operation known as Round River, which is a moat that protects the castle. And then they labeled all of these people, plus all of the various different Republican influencers, including President Trump, the current president of the United States at the time, as basically disinformation agents for Russia. Well, then going, and this is the important part, in the counterintelligence operation, going and listing the names of companies and people who they believe were victims or targets of Russian disinformation, and who should be, any information coming them should be a target of disinformation from these disinformation agents. In other words, they become protected from investigation into these matters and means. Now, over the last few days, what I've been saying is what you're seeing in the declassification that is being set up is the drip, drip flood. Trump a few weeks ago came out, addressed the nation. One of the things he said is that China interfered and influenced the 2020 election. Not that they changed any votes. They didn't change any votes. He said that what they did with their various different social influence operations, of what they did by stealing voter public and private data of how their money was flowing, that they went out there and influenced and interfered with the 2020 election. Now that becomes really interesting because at the same time that that was coming out, you also had the lab origins of COVID-19 being directly identified as being gain-of-function research started in the United States, then funded by Fauci to continue in the Wuhan lab in Wuhan, China. But they continue to say that it was accidentally released because that part of the connection of the information is not made yet. But what do you get? Excuse me. A few weeks later, you get three other various different points of information. You get March Toll, you get Round River, and you get Oxford Comma. All two of them FBI investigations into the Trump administration, into Trump himself, labeling him a Russian agent. Another one in the Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, labeling him an agent of Russian disinformation. These were done by Andy McCabe, who was the acting FBI director after James Comey was fired. And then you get Round River, which happens previous to the 2020 election, basically protecting these various different corporations and people from FBI investigation, claiming that they're targets of Russian disinformation when they knew that Hunter Biden's laptop was about to fall out and come out into the public. Okay, now why is all that important? Because what you're seeing is you are seeing the puzzle being put together one small piece at a time. We see the 2020 election influence in interference just as a China thing right now. Nobody's looking at the financial circles of China during that point in time and who they were funding. But what happens when the various different NGOs that were associated with the DNC and the Democrats and Democrat candidates that were associated with BLM and Antifa, were associated with the Summer of Love that rose up in violent riots across the United States of America, have ancillary funding models that directly come from China? Now it changes tones and context. What happens when various different politicians are directly connected and affiliated with these NGOs or with the corporations and private companies that were driving this money in? What happens when we start to find out that various different NGOs were funding the mail-in ballot scam that happened during the 2020 election that goes back and directly associates with the country of China? Again, number 3 is what begins to happen when you start to see that counterintelligence operation ran by Christopher Wray under Donald Trump that labeled Donald Trump, or Andy McCabe, Donald Trump a Russian spy, that labeled Jeff Sessions a Russian spy, that when Wray comes in, he runs a counterintelligence operation to protect the Bidens, the DNC, the Democrats, and various different companies. What happens when those companies become associated or criminally complicit with China? Why does that matter? Because it brings new context to what Donald Trump was saying when he addressed the nation about China interference and influence. Because when he comes out there, states it, we can prove it undoubtedly right here, China influenced and interfered in the 2020 election. And now what happens is all of the evidence starts to show that, hey, these people colluded with China to steal the 2020 election. And that becomes the next part of how this all interconnects. And just like that, I guess Mike Benz must have been watching this show this last week, because now Mike Benz is saying something similar. He's not putting it all together, but I want you to listen to what Mike Benz says here, because he's putting together exactly what I've been saying pertaining to Round River.
Some details about it that are more speculative than you can rely on. But the more I read the piece that you published and saw what Cash submitted to Chuck Grassley, there are several levels of this that are concerning almost beyond belief. So obviously the first family itself was taking millions of dollars from China. The Biden first family through Hunter Biden and China CEFC Energy, China CEFC Energy was taking $5 to $10 million in consulting fees from Chinese energy firms as Hunter Biden was flying on Air Force One to China with Vice President Biden in order to secure those deals. Biden's CIA director, Bill Burns, took millions of dollars from China when he was the head of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace for 7 years before becoming CIA director, taking CCP members and putting them on Carnegie's board, as well as forming a joint Carnegie-China center so that they could cooperate more closely. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was the managing director of the Penn Biden Center, which took millions of dollars from China. So all the way up and down the entire foreign policy establishment of the Biden administration, from the White House to the CIA to the State Department, you had millions of dollars being juiced by the Chinese government the entire time. And then the more you think about this story, the more shocking it gets when you think about the massive, biggest election censorship event in human history, which was DHS CISA's censorship of the 2020 election, specifically to stop election misinformation, which was all run out of a group that Chris Krebs formed called the Countering Foreign Influence Task Force, which you would think would have been the exact task force at DHS set up to stop something like this and set up to be responsive to something like this, when in fact it did the exact opposite. They told us there was no foreign interference. Now, how does the FBI know this, and the CIA know this, and the DHS task force, who is responsible for stopping the domestic side of this operation, not be informed? How is it possible that this intelligence was circulated at the FBI and CIA levels, but not at the DHS level?
Wow, sounds really familiar, doesn't it, Mike Pence? It's what I was saying the last few days on my show. You have these these D-class drips that are coming out in the Trump administration. Trump starts with what? Tulsi Gabbard on June 30th coming out saying Wuhan lab created COVID-19 and accidentally released it. Then you have Trump addressing the nation on a DNI report that he received that China interfered and influenced the 2020 presidential election. And since that point in time, you've had 3 different points of declassification that showed you that the deep state under Andy McCabe at the 7th floor of the FBI, under the CIA, under CISA, under the White House, were all colluding against then President Trump and then colluding with President Biden to hide the information of the 2020 election, that the 2020 election was stolen by China, or China influenced and interfered with the 2020 election, but also assisted other people to do it. And those people were put on a counterintelligence operation list and said, these people are good. They're all just friends of ours. Don't investigate any of them. You have CISA coming out stating that, the most secure election ever. Oh, yeah, absolutely. When we know it was not, report after report. In other words, it was never Russian collusion with President Trump. It was always DNC and Democrat collusion with China. That's going to become a big phrase that's going to come about over the course of the next few months. The DNC and China collusion, not Trump and Russia collusion. That's the truth. And what you're going to see is you're going to start seeing the money connection to the DNC, to all these various different corporations and companies. One of the things that you're going to see through the ActBlue investigation is they talk about foreign donors into ActBlue, which is illegal. What do? They spoof various different DNC donors' credit card numbers without putting the last 3 in. They've created private companies to go out there. These other ancillary foreign organizations would fund those private companies, which then would flow money into the Democrat coffers. Guess where you're going to find a lot of that money came from? China. It's coming, guys. And see, people are mad at Donald Trump. Like, why didn't you release all of the information pertaining to 2020 election fraud? Because you can't. Not yet. You have to show everybody everything. Allow them to begin piecing it together to construct the larger narrative that happened. And then boom, when the crescendo happens, when the floodgates open, people were well informed. When the Trump administration comes out and goes, in the 2020 election, fraud, this is what we have. Dominion voting machines, Smartmatic software, Venezuela, Iran, China, the UK, Italy, they were directly involved in this. And how did it work? Money was flown through these NGOs, and then these NGOs utilized their connections to these people, and then this ties back to the Round River, this ties back to March Toll. It'll all be interconnected. That's how this is going to come about. And this is why the big flood part is that big reveal, to where everyday average Americans who are taking this in, they're like, March Toll, that was an interesting operation. Why did they do that? We have Round River, though. That's pretty damn crazy. But then when all of this comes up, it's all going to come together, and they're going to be like, I get it now. That's why. All right, what else we got here? I think that's good. I was going to talk about some UFO stuff, but I want to save that for next week because we're going to continue that conversation on the OG show. And if you didn't check out the OG show Thursday, please definitely go check out the OG show. Alpha and I had a great show. We talked about a lot of different topics, but primarily we kicked ass on the UFO topic. I thought it was a great conversation. And then last night we did the live Q&A on Social Red Pill on for all of our premium subscribers. That was pretty awesome. Guys, if you want to help support anything that I do here, I'm a one-man show. I do this all myself, self-produced, self-done. I built this backdrop. I built the desk that I'm broadcasting on. I bought all this stuff. I put all this together, these monitors, all this stuff. I did all this. I do all this. So I put all this together, all the post-production, production, all the news, all the information, all my own research. I don't have any help, and I don't want any help. But I did this all myself. So, guys, I hope you appreciate that, because I appreciate you and everything that you guys have done. I'm going to go over, I think we had a few Rumble rants come in. And I'm not good with bringing those things up on the screen. But let me blow this up and see what we got. Oh, yeah, look at that. We got Annie Machinations, gifted 5 subscriptions. Thank you so much, Annie. I appreciate that. You're awesome. And I hope everybody out there got the subscriptions thanked Annie. Jeffy Gel, stay frosty, my friends. $5 Rumble Rant. Thank you so much, Jeffy Gel. And then Tasty PB. $5 Rumble Rant, liking the studio upgrade. Thank you so much, Tasty PBG. $20, May G. Thank you so much, May G. I'm loving the studio upgrade. Here's a token appreciation towards the expense. Oh, thank you. And then Diesel T, $50 Rumble Rant. You're the best, Josh. Oh, thank you so much, guys. You guys are awesome. And then going in over here, I'm going to try to look at YouTube, and YouTube's a little hard. Actually, I can go right over here. I put it up here for a reason. So if I can go over here, this is where my YouTube is. And I got to scroll all the way. I got to scroll all the way up. And what do we see we have here? We have... It's really difficult to do it over here. I should probably go into the YouTube studio to check that out. I only see 2 over there. Let me give... I can do YouTube better in this direction. There we are. So on the Restream chat, I can see most of them. We have 10 Jews from Denise Blaine, 3777. 10 Jews. Thank you. So we call our jewels on YouTube jewels just because it's kind of funny. But thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. And then did we get anything else coming? I think there's at least 1 more that I kind of glanced at and saw come in. I can actually see it over here. I just don't know how to read that graph very well, what they do over there in the YouTube studio. Like I said, I'm very scatterbrained sometimes. But if you got any final questions, you might want to get them in now. We have the GOAT trophy. 1,000 Jews sent by Denise Blaine, 3737. Thank you so much, Denise. And then Alan Moore, 9796. 200 Jews. Appreciate that, Alan. Thank you guys so much. You guys are the best. And don't forget, go on over to redpills.tv. If you guys want to support everything that we do here and just support me, whether it's, through a monthly subscription or go to our sponsors or just directly with our PayPal or Gift Send Go campaign, right there, redpills.tv, redpills.tv. All right, guys, much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. And we're going to see you guys tomorrow night with Q After Hours, myself and Alpha Warrior. Until then, here's some more music that I wrote specifically for this. Good night.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns into silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Through the smoke Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see, the silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice will not be sold for a last prize. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, the veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time, time is near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time, there was a time. Now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!